Hello, everyone, and welcome to the I Love KidMin podcast, the place where you and your church take the next steps in your kids' ministry journey. We know you love KidMin, and we want to give you the tools to succeed. Now, your hosts, Ryan Frank and Corey Jones.
Hey, I Love KidMin friends. Welcome to episode number 5 of the I Love KidMin podcast. Corey, we've made it to number 5. What do you think?
We're here. It's exciting.
We're here. It is, and we are off to a great start. So glad that you made time to listen today, whether you are on your commute, exercising, sitting in your office, laying in bed at home, whatever you're doing. Thank you for joining us. We got a good podcast lined up for you today.
Today, we're going to be focusing on being a children's ministry leader who lasts a lifetime. And reading through your post, it's easy to see how events like VBS, summer camp, that they're wearing you out. And we want it to be an encouraging thing for you, though, to just keep on going.
Yeah, that's good because, nobody ever gets into children's ministry wanting to burn out. Everybody wants to, we all want to have a fulfilling ministry. And Corey has got a great, I'll let him tee it up in a few minutes, training that he's going to share with you. That we're going to play for you in a little bit on this very topic of what do you need to do in your life to last a lifetime? Because as KidMin leaders, it's easy to get tired. It's easy to lose sight of why we do what we do. It's easy to focus on problems instead of focusing on the one who holds the answers. So today's podcast is going to be about as practical as it gets, and I can't wait to dig in. Thanks for being here.
And Ryan, you've been doing ministry, a couple years now. How have you lasted so long while others, maybe even people that are more talented than you, have burned out or faded away?
Yeah, so are you saying I'm old, Corey? Is that what you're saying?
It was a little hat tip to that, but okay. I didn't straight say it.
Well, that's a really good question. I would like to think I've kept my walk with the Lord a priority over the years, although just like anybody else, there are ups and downs, and none of us have nailed this perfect. But I recognize that the more I prioritize my walk with the Lord, the better off I am and the better spot I am. On a very super practical level, something that's helped me, Corey, is just always being committed to building a team and having a team. And I'm not even talking paid employees. I'm talking about like a team of volunteers and people that are willing to roll up their sleeves, shoulder some kingdom work with me, and join my team. And a lot of leaders burn out, honestly, Corey, I think, when they get all alone and they look around and they're all by themselves and they're discouraged. I cannot stress to you the value that's been in my life of just making sure I'm constantly building leaders, developing leaders, recruiting leaders, working myself out of a job. It really, for me, has been one of the secret sauces to keep me going.
No, that's been great. That's some very good advice. I'm excited to hear more even than just that. There's like 2 great things in this podcast. So before we do that, though, Ryan, we have another new sponsor. So who do we want to thank this week?
Yeah, we do. So big shout out to our sponsors, our podcast sponsors. We have a brand new one that you maybe have never heard of. It is 2819curriculum.com. Now, let me explain this to you. The number 28 is the number 2 and 8, but then you have to spell out 19 curriculum. So it's a long website. 2819 is spelled out curriculum.com. We'll put this in I Love KidMin and in the show notes. It's based on Matthew 28:19. This is a new curriculum in the last couple of months. Corey, it is both for Sunday school and children's church. It was birthed out of the Great Commission in Matthew 28:19, which is go into all the world with the gospel. And what does this look like for kids? And so I think you owe it to yourself to go to 2819curriculum.com. I have spent some time in this curriculum. I've not used it personally, but I've downloaded it. I've looked at it. I've spent hours and hours with the people who created it. And I think it's a really good curriculum that's going to serve a lot of churches well. You can download sample lessons, and as we record or as we publish this podcast, it is priced at 30% off on the store. No promo codes or anything needed. They just said, hey, let us know the day you air the broadcast, and for a week we'll run it 30% off everything. So a week gives you time to download it, check it out, and if you decide you want to try it, you can save 30%. Again, it is 28, the number 2, the number 8, then spell out 19curriculum.com. Pretty fun curriculum, definitely worth checking out. And we want to thank 2819 Curriculum for being the sponsor of today's I Love Kid Men podcast. All right, Corey, it's time for our favorite things. You get as geeked about the favorite things as I do, Corey.
Probably. I think it's one of the best ones.
I do. I love it. Okay. Now
it might be weird too, but I'm looking forward to hearing yours because I still haven't heard yours. I don't know what it is.
Okay. So here's mine. Mine is not new. Mine is something that I recommended to somebody this week, and I pulled it off my shelf, and I want to reread it because it's been like 3 years since I read it. It's a book. It's a John Maxwell book. All right. The book is Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. Okay. Not sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And the point of this book is that sometimes the greatest things in life come from our failures, our disappointments, our losses. Sometimes we look at losses and failures and disappointments as setbacks, but they can actually be catalysts that God uses in our life to push us forward. And so I bought this for a pastor friend the other day that's going through a difficult time. And I was trying to encourage, hey, this disappointment can actually be used for good in your life. And so I pulled the book out, Corey. I've got it sitting on my desk because I want to take some time in the next week or two and reread it. John Maxwell book, Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. You got one for us, Corey?
Yeah, I do. Mine kind of. It's not a book. It's not a John. He's written a couple of them, but no, I didn't.
He has.
Mine's like a hack that I stumbled upon, but it's actually been pretty cool. Here it is. Friend request, like the editors and writers of your local news people, the local news networks. I did this recently. I crossed paths with one of the guys that does the faith part of the newspaper, and we connected. I sent him a friend request, but then here's where the hack comes in. He saw me post about camp and was like, hey, can I write up an article about that? And I was like, sure, that's weird, but great. And it was one of those things where I would have never thought about it, but he's looking for stories. He wants stories to share. And I post stuff all the time about what's going on at my church, and it's stuff that is mutual benefit. He wants to share that. I would love for him to share it too. So it's just a little hack. Go send some friend requests. See ways that you can help them, and I imagine in the process it'll be a good return for you as well.
Cool. I love it. That's such a great idea. It doesn't cost you a penny, but it can do so much for your ministry. So way to go, Corey. Good hack. And that's our favorite things. So we'd love to hear your favorite things as always. A lot of you have been doing this, and it's been fun to watch. So go over to the I Love Kidmin Facebook group. Tell Corey and I, you got to tag us. Tell us what some of your favorite things are. Maybe we'll feature one or two of them in the weeks to come in an upcoming episode.
Today, we'll be hearing from Dick Crider. Dick speaks a lot at different conferences. He works with DiscipleLand, a Sunday school curriculum company. And today, we're going to be hearing from him as he shares with us a ton of important tips on being a children's ministry leader who lasts a lifetime. Let's turn things over to this week's expert guide.
When I say the word integrity, shout out to me what comes to your mind. A synonym for integrity. Say it. Honest.
Truthful.
Upstanding. Faithful.
Trustworthy.
Consistent.
Trustworthy.
Principled? Responsible? Humility? Sure. Say it real loud. Godly? Okay. So when we think of integrity, all of these things come to mind. And what I discovered is that children's ministers who are going to make it for a lifetime, they are people of integrity. In other words, God has looked in their heart and placed them in this position because as He looks in your heart, He says to you, I know I can trust you with what I've called you to do because you're a person of integrity. You know what? It's scary, but there are a lot of people out there in ministry today that when you get to know them, they are not people of integrity. Why? Because we're fighting a spiritual battle. And the one place the enemy wants to win is in children's ministry. Because this is the future of the church. This is the future of Christianity, is your children's ministry. So there are people of integrity. The third thing we know is they have learned to fix their eyes on Jesus. Did you hear what I just said? They have what? Learned. For many years in my life, I thought there was something wrong with me because I had a really hard time keeping my eyes fixed on Jesus, because just when I thought I was able to do that, there would be a distraction. And then I would, feel terrible about, I can't do this. How do you do this? And I finally realized a few years ago that fixing your eyes on Jesus is a skill that you learn. It's like a guy that wants to play basketball and he has to learn to dribble the ball. Then he's got to learn to dribble the ball through the opposing team who's trying to take the ball. And in this spiritual warfare we're fighting, fixing our eyes on Jesus is a skill that you develop, that you work on every day. And just when you think you got it mastered, along comes a volunteer that rattles your cage, shakes your boat, and you got your eyes fixed on them. Yeah. And you know what the good part about this is? We know that He's faithful. We know that He's faithful. And when we find ourselves fixing our eyes on people, that's when we get in trouble in our ministry, isn't it? Now, scripturally, there's so many passages that talk about fixing our eyes on Jesus. Romans 12:2 talks about being transformed by the renewing of our mind. Then in Philippians it talks about, fixing our eyes on thinking about things that are holy and pure and good. Anybody in the room have trouble doing that occasionally? I think we all do, don't we? But I finally realized that this is a skill that is a part of the sanctification process for us. And when we learn this skill, then we can transfer that skill to the kids in our ministry, but first to the volunteers. Because if you got volunteers working with your kids and they don't have their eyes fixed on Jesus, they don't have a clue how to teach the kids to fix their eyes on Jesus. So it's a skill that we develop, and it's a skill that we keep honing year after year after year in our ministry, because you know that your ministry is filled with challenges. And every challenge is designed by the enemy to knock you off track and get your eyes fixed on the people and the problem rather than being fixed on Jesus. I have a friend that's a children's pastor in Florida. And an interesting thing, he said that he was struggling in his ministry, and he said a guy in the congregation came to him and said, you know what? You need to learn a skill. You need to learn how to fix your eyes on Jesus. And all of these other distractions will diminish greatly in their importance to you. You won't be running around putting out fires and chasing trouble. You will be relaxed. You will be at peace, because there's a peace that comes when we learn to fix our eyes on Jesus, isn't there? And it's a skill. And if you don't have that skill, I don't care how many years you've been in ministry, you can develop it. Because guess what? I was about 61 when I finally figured out how to do it. I was about 61 when I finally figured out that this is a skill, that this did not come the day I was saved, and that I have to learn this skill. Does that make sense to you? I hope that's good news to you, because in Hebrews it says, therefore, this is such a cool scripture. Since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us do what? Let us throw off all the annoyances, every single thing that hinders us, and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us do what? Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus. Why? Because He's the one that called you. He's the one that's going to perfect you in your ministry. Why is He going to do this? Because it brings Him great joy when He sees His children learning how to focus on Him. So, for the joy set before Him, He endured the cross so that He could enjoy the joy that you receive from fixing your eyes on Jesus, and that the joy He gets when He sees one of His children waking up and learning that skill. So He endured a lot for us, and then He sat down at the right throne of God. Now He says, consider Him who endured such opposition for sinful men. Why? So that you don't grow weary and lose heart. And you know what just happened to me about 6 months ago? All of a sudden, I realized that when you learn to do this, and you learn to persevere, and you learn to grow in your ministry to children, that there comes a place where you get to join that great cloud of witnesses, and now younger people in ministry look to you as a part of that great cloud of witnesses, and you become that encourager to them. In April, I went to a conference, and I shared this, and I was teaching this, and a woman came up to me, what a blessing, and she said, in my life, you are a part of that great cloud of witnesses. What a humbling experience to know that when we learn to fix our eyes on Jesus, someday we get to join this great cloud of witnesses to younger people in children's ministry. Isn't that encouraging? So, number 4, this is the toughie. They have a teachable spirit. They're willing to learn from others. You know why this is so difficult? Because I discovered when I went into ministry a long time ago, I thought I was supposed to know there is about children's ministry. And so when you think you're supposed to know everything about children's ministry, you try to act like you know everything about children's ministry. And that takes you out of the loop of having a teachable spirit and learning from others. And so those that are going to last a lifetime in ministry, they are willing to take advice. How many of you just love to sit down with a group of parents and have them criticize what you just did? That's no fun. So what do? We avoid those situations, don't we? I will never forget in my first ministry, we did this big thing, and a couple of the parents came to me and said, so when are we going to sit down and evaluate it? And I said, we ain't. I'm not having anything to do with that. But you know what? They forced me. I did not like some of the things they said, because I didn't have a very teachable spirit at that time. And I didn't know how to receive evaluations because the criticism was very threatening to me personally. But you know what? When we learn to do this, then we learn from our mistakes. And these two people, the names were Gene and Jean. And they forced me to sit down and take criticism, and they were hard on me. I was young, and I didn't like their criticism. But I have to tell you that "48 years later, I bumped into their daughter at a conference 2 years ago. And she said, Dick Crider? And I said, Beth Duncan? She'd been in my ministry. And she immediately called her parents on the phone, and they wanted to talk to me. You know what the first thing they said to me was? It is so good to hear your voice. I want to tell you how much we love you. You know what? If I had not had a teacher, if I had not been willing, if they had not forced me, I wasn't willing. If they had not forced me to shut my mouth, stop defending myself, sit down, and take some advice, I would never, ever been able to have a teachable spirit. So those that last a lifetime, they have a teachable spirit. Next thing we discover about those that are going to last a lifetime and run a good race, they are absolutely passionate about children. But what are they passionate about? They're passionate about, most importantly, seeing children have a life-transforming experience with Jesus Christ that lasts a lifetime for them. Because you know, and I know, that we can coerce any kid we want to signing a card and praying a prayer at VBS camp and thinking they're saved. And the tragedy of that is that today in children's ministry, we have about 32% of those kids who ever have a life-transforming experience with Jesus Christ. And that's why we're losing over 70% of our kids before they graduate high school. And I think one of our primary goals in being passionate about kids is that we confirm that they've had a life-transforming experience with Jesus Christ. You know, I was at a church, and one of the coolest things I saw was that when kids came out of children's ministry and went into the middle school ministry, the first thing their middle school sponsor did was sit down with them and say, share your testimony with me. And if they didn't have a testimony and they said, this kid's not saved, then that became, for that that middle school pastor and that sponsor, that became their ministry to this young person, is helping them understand that the most important thing in your life is having this life-transforming experience with Jesus Christ. Those that are passionate about kids like to be with them. They just like to be around them. And you know what? Kids can tell if you like to be around them or if you don't like to be around them. And right down the road in Murfreesboro, there is a church I went to, and it was a brand new children's pastor, and she had been a school administrator. And I was talking to her about her ministry, and she said to me, well, I really don't see myself as one who interacts a lot with the kids, but rather as an administrator. And I said, and you are doomed. Yeah. Because it ain't going to work. And I said, put all of that aside, and you take charge of children's ministry. And you take charge of children's church. You do it every week so that these kids get to know you. You know what? About 6 months later, I got an email from her. A long email. And she said, the best advice you ever gave me was to do children's church. And she said, the weirdest thing happened. She says, I really didn't like being around the kids. I liked hiding and doing administration. And she said, I have fallen in love with my kids. You're passionate. It's not casual. Oh, yeah, I like to be around. You're passionate. You want to be with them. And they know it. They know when you want to be there, don't they? You know what? If you don't like being around the kids, pray and say, God, either change my heart or change my ministry. One or the other. Number 6, they are discipleship-oriented, not program-oriented. Because you know and I know, if you are program-oriented as a children's pastor, every event has to be better than the last event. I would not want to be Ryan and Martine, because next year at this conference, what are they going to think they have to do? It's got to be bigger and better than this year. That's human nature. That's human nature. And when you are program oriented, the next program has to be better than the last program. Am I right? And that wears you out. But not only does it wear you out, it brings you to the place that you say, what is my ministry really all about? But when you are discipleship oriented, you know the goals you have for your kids. You can articulate the discipleship goals you have for your kids. And may I suggest 3 goals? That your kids come to the place where they know God intimately. You know what that takes? That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. But the first goal in a discipleship-oriented ministry is that I bring my volunteers first and then my kids to a place where they know God intimately. Because what is the result of knowing someone intimately? You wake up one day and say, oh, I have fallen. Because you see, when our kids are on the right course of discipleship and they know God intimately, they naturally fall in love with Him passionately and His Word. And what happens when you fall in love with God passionately, now your heart is transformed and you want to serve Him selflessly above everything else. And kids can do it. This can happen. But I got to tell you that if you're going to be discipleship oriented, 2 things. You got to be able to articulate what it means, and we have measurable goals, and that is they know Him intimately, and love Him passionately, and their heart beats to serve Him selflessly. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
It's not real hard, but I have to tell you something else. Guess what? You can't make a disciple if you ain't one. Mm-hmm. And if you in the room don't know Him intimately, you don't love Him passionately. And your heart doesn't beat to serve Him selflessly. And you cannot teach those things to someone unless it is a part of your character. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay, that was good stuff. I want to listen more, Corey. How can I listen more? You got more? That's all you got for today, isn't it?
I guess it's just an excerpt from the vault, and so you could go down
It is.
And get the rest of it. He shares, I think it's 10 whole tips. We only shared 2 of them.
Yeah, so Dick's a speaker at Kidman Nation MegaCon, and this recording was from the vault if you were there. But it's good stuff. I love what he said about integrity, because that is crucial to being in ministry long term. Dick was right on, Corey, when he said, or when he talked about how the enemy wants to win the battle in kids ministry, because kids ministry is the future of the church. So we have got, there's anything you have to guard in your life, and I have to guard in my life, guard your character, guard your integrity. What about you, Corey? What jumped out at you?
I loved how he put a focus on learning to fix your eyes on Jesus, because there's just so many distractions. Just think about your phone with all the notifications and pressures to post and all of that. But deciding, making a conscious effort, I am learning to fix my eyes on Jesus. That's probably the most important thing that I heard today.
That's good stuff. And let's keep the conversation rolling. This is the I Love Kidmin podcast. If you're not part of the I Love Kidmin Facebook group, jump over there. We'd love to have you. We're going to continue the conversation on Facebook. So today, Corey's going to post something. Just go to I Love Kidmin on Facebook and search for episode number 5 of the I Love Kidmin podcast if you don't see it at the top. And here's what we want you to do today. I'd love to hear from you. How many years have you been serving in kids ministry? And then here's the thing. I'd love to hear I'd love to hear from you a sentence or two on what you're doing today to last a lifetime. Not, this is something I want to do. Like, what am I really doing today to last a lifetime? Would you share that with the group? And let's encourage one another. So that's over on the I Love Kidmin podcast. Corey, this wraps up episode number 5. Kind of sad. These episodes, they come and go too fast, don't they?
Oh, I'm excited. I like the conversation that we get to be a part of throughout the week. So it just keeps it all going. I love it.
It does. And Corey, you're such a great host. So thank you. Corey schedules all this stuff and worked with Andy, the producer of the podcast. And so, Corey, we love you and your wife, Nicole. You guys are an awesome blessing to Beth and I and the Kidmin community. Thank you for being such a great host. And everybody that's listening, thank you for your support of the I Love Kidmin podcast. It would mean the world to us if you would share the podcast with some children's ministry leaders in your community, some of your volunteers, some people that you think would benefit from this podcast. Please, please, please pay it forward, share the podcast. We want to help as many Kidmin leaders as we can. Until next time, thanks for your support of I Love Kidmin. Keep making a difference. We'll see you next week in episode number 6.
This episode might be over, but the conversation is just getting started. Head over to the I Love Kidmin Facebook group and let's talk about your next steps in your kids' ministry journey.